Hi, I'm Devi Ward Erickson,
And I'm Alaina Salks.
and you are listening to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education. Alaina and I are bringing you over 27 years of combined expertise in the field of holistic sexual wellness to help you integrate your body, mind, spirit, and sex.
New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so make sure to like and subscribe on all your favorite listening platforms. And make sure you follow Holistic Sexology Institute on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for your daily dose of Sex is Medicine. Now let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education and the woke podcast for sexual rebels and spiritual warriors. I am one of your delightful hosts, Miss Devi Ward Erickson, and I am once again honored and delighted that you are choosing to spend time with us here today. We thank you again for all of your questions and all of the engagement and interaction you've been sharing with us. We love it when you send us questions through Instagram. We love it when you send us questions through the website. So thank you again for trusting us with your vulnerability and asking us questions because we love interacting with you and we love your comments and we love your feedback. I'm going to remind you, if you haven't already, to go ahead and like and subscribe to this podcast on all your favorite listening platforms. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and please leave us a review. We haven't had a review in a while. I would love to see your feedback in the comments there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, yay, please know that our YouTube channel is shadow banned because of how we run our big mouths here at Sex is Medicine. So you can really help us out by subscribing and liking the videos and even sharing the videos. That would really meet our needs for support and encouragement to continue bringing you this amazing content. Today, I'm going to be interviewing my amazing co-host, Alaina Salks, about her work dissecting, I would say, dissecting and dismantling this cultural concept that the clitoris is the sole source of female pleasure. So, not trying to throw shade on the clitoris. We love the clitoris. The clitoris is way more extensive than many people realize. It's more than just that little beautiful button at the top of your vulva. It actually reaches deep inside the body, and so we're going to outline where it is and what it looks like. But also, just the way we're wired neurologically. The clitoris is simply not the only source of female pleasure. It's just not. It's factually incorrect. Like, if it was correct, that would be fine. We'd be like, okay, that's correct. But it's simply factually incorrect. And once you understand the neurological wiring of the, I'm going to say, female pelvis, you will see very clearly that we have multiple zones in and around the vagina that give rise to orgasmic sensation and pleasure. And that's not fair to leave out all those other beautiful parts. It's time to invite everyone to the pleasure party, as I like to say. Invite all of our parts to the pleasure party. So without further ado, here we are with our dear co-host, Alaina Salks, breaking it down. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Round of applause, Alaina. Thank you so much for this work. And so I remember you sharing with me about this work several months ago, actually, because this was part of the research that you were doing for the Holistic Sexology Certification Program. So tell me more about how you compiled this work.
Yeah. Thank you, Davey, and thank you for interviewing me today. Um, yeah, this definitely came up as a part of our work developing specifically the genital anatomy components of the holistic sexology portion of our certification program. So when we were developing this part of the program, we wanted to go beyond just this physical anatomy, just kind of like pointing out this and this and this is what this does. And we wanted to get more into some of the like socio-cultural aspects of that surround our genital anatomy, right? Like going in deep into myths, into social pressure around how we relate to our anatomy. And as as I was doing research and going deeper, I kept coming across something that you and I have seen many times in our very, very long career, which is this claim that the clitoris or the clitoral urethrovaginal complex is the only source of orgasm for women. And what I really kind of have found alarming of late is that this myth is continuing to spread and is gaining traction.
Mm.
So I'm seeing it a lot. I have this lovely feminist bookstore in my community that has a beautiful sex education section. They're like really on it. They're getting all the new books in all the time. And of course, whenever I'm there, I'm kind of paging through them. And I keep seeing every time I open a new sex education book, there it is, like a new sex educator is claiming that the clitoris or the clitoral urethrovaginal complex or CUV complex is the sole source of orgasm for women. And like you said, it's problematic because it's simply not true. And so I was really curious as to why um, this pathway, like this line of thinking, like what was happening there, why was it continuing, and why is it gaining traction?
Yeah. And I think that like what's arising for me is that there should be a distinction, right? I would love us to like present a distinction that in terms of the clitoris or clitoral urinary vaginal complex, the CUV, which we will outline for you if you haven't heard of that. It's a kind of an inclusive concept for the clitoris. But the concept that it's not the sole source of female pleasure, but it can be a primary source of female pleasure, right? And so that is part of what we teach. Absolutely. Your clitoris is absolutely a primary source of pleasure for many people with clitorises, but our point is it's not the only source. And so that is where the I guess the alarm bells start ringing for me, is the insistence that every sensation that we experience, sexual pleasure sensation, should be and is sourced from this complex, when in fact, as we've described, the cervix, which is completely independent of the clitoral urinary vaginal complex, it's completely independent, is a primary source of female pleasure, as is the A spot, as is the P spot, and these all are all zones towards the back end of the vagina. And so what
Mhm,
happens for many vagina owners, women and vagina owners, is that these areas towards the back of the vagina are also areas where there's usually numbness or
mhm,
pain. And so this danger in the conversation, what I see as the danger in the conversation of, oh no, the clitoris is the sole or the only source of female pleasure, is that when you do have numbness or pain towards the back of the vagina, it's categorized as normal,
mhm,
or that's just the way it is, you just don't have nerve endings back there. But that's not true. We do. And in fact, in some of our episodes about the cervix, we've talked about how studies have shown that some cervixes have up to 200 or 250,000 nerve fibers. That's way more than the clitoral complex, right? So what a tragedy and a travesty if like, let's say for myself, 20 years ago, when my cervix was either numb or painful, the only sensation I had there was pain, if any at all. If I had just been like, oh, well, it's not supposed to feel pleasure at all, right? I'm just going to ignore it because that's normal. Instead of, the little red flag letting me know,
mhm,
hey, baby, you got some trauma there. You got some
mhm,
wounding. You need to apply some medicine to this spot. And because I did that, I now have access to mind melting cervical pleasure. And in fact, for
mhm,
me, my cervix is a more reliable orgasm zone than my clitoris. That's just the way it's shaped up, right? But it didn't
mhm,
start that way. And so for me, the danger in this conversation that the CUV is the sole source of female pleasure kind of gives people permission to ignore and brush aside when they have numbness or pain and their entire sexual organ. Your
yeah.
entire vagina is built for pleasure. The entire thing is built for pleasure, not just parts of it, right? And the other piece I'm going to add before I hand you back the mic is that it's very striking to me, kind of this, I'm going to say, militant attitude around, no, the
Mhm,
clitoris is the sole source of female pleasure, when the clitoris is basically a penis turned inside out, right? So it's kind of like saying the penis is the sole source of pleasure for men when it's not. Y'all guys, your anus is beautiful. your prostate has pleasure to give you, right? And so that's a whole other conversation, which we'll get into in season two. But our point is that claiming something is a sole source of female of pleasure is dangerous because it it allows for us to ignore and not reclaim, I will say, not bring into the picture, not integrate into our being the totality of our pleasure zones, as opposed to just focusing on this one piece and limiting ourselves. We want more for
Yeah.
you than that. We want
Yeah.
unlimited bliss and unlimited sensation. So
Yeah.
that's my rant.
Yeah, yeah. And as we've talked about before, it seems like the motivation for this is really rooted in trying to soothe people, right? Because there are a lot of people who aren't experiencing different orgasms, maybe some at all, and many only just from stimulation of the clitoris. And I think the often the motivation is to reduce shame and stigma for those folks, which is a beautiful motivation, but it's harmful if it doesn't include the whole picture. Like, I think that we can find ways to soothe people and let them know that they're not broken and that it's okay, that their experiences are okay, and leave space for nuance and leave space for them to explore more if that's what they want to do. And like you said, just taking these other parts of ourselves out of the picture is robbing people. It's robbing people of their ability to potentially have a greater capacity for pleasure.
Beautiful. Yes. Well
Yeah.
said. Well
Yeah.
said. So let's dig into this work that you've done, because you've spent a lot of time. So what is the CUV, the clitoral urethral vaginal complex? This is a fairly new terminology, because when I started in the field in 2008, 2009, that is not what that's not what was happening. That's not what folks were calling it. So
Yeah.
I've heard this come up in the last, I'm going to say, 5 years, this terminology.
Yeah, yeah. So the clitoral urethrovaginal complex, they're starting to kind of put together a number of different structures within the vagina and the vulva. So they're categorizing it as a complex, vast internal network of erectile tissue interconnected with other pleasure structures, including the periurethral sponge and the anterior vaginal wall. And so specifically, this region can produce several distinct orgasmic experiences. So most notably clitoral orgasms, U-spot orgasms, which are orgasms originating from stimulation of the opening of the urethra, and G-spot orgasms. So some sources also include the A-spot orgasm in this, but the structures responsible for A-spot orgasms are largely unresearched and really not understood from a scientific perspective. Um,
Okay, I gotta
and so,
pause you there. I gotta put
yeah,
the hypogastric nerve like innervates the area where the A spot and the P spot is. Like, it's not
yeah,
like
yeah,
when you look at a pelvic diagram and
yeah,
neurological, pathways, the hypogastric nerve, which connects to the
yeah.
cervix, connects to the uterus, it's right there. So I'm like, it doesn't take rocket science. It's just like deductive, right? And it's not. It doesn't
I
like
know.
you're looking for a structure. If it's not a structure, it's not. It's like massaging just a zone. So okay, go on.
I
I
know. I'm
get
with you. I'm
frustrated
with
with the
you.
ignorance of
Yeah,
Western science. It's so
I
frustrating.
it is really frustrating. And I mean, I think I don't even want to get started on like the obsession with researching, women's orgasms, because we don't like spend a lot of time and effort researching men's orgasms, like, oh, why are men able to have an anal orgasm? Or how is it possible that they can have an orgasm from their penis? Like, these are not conversations that we have for for people who have penises. But for people who have vulvas and vaginas, it's like, how can it be possible? We must know why. And in reality, anywhere you have nerves, pleasure sensing nerves, you can have a pleasurable experience and possibly orgasm. It's really, I think, as fucking simple as that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. So the CUV incorporates the clitoral glands, the
Yes.
urethral opening, the G spot. Now, what about these clitoral bulbs and these clitoral legs and stuff?
Yeah, it's supposed to include that as well. Um, Yeah, and I feel a little torn about this concept of the clitoral urethral vaginal complex. I mean, yes, on one hand, all of our bodily systems are connected, but on the other, the paraurethral sponge, which is essentially what most people are referring to when they talk about the G-spot, has completely different biological origins than the clitoris does,
Yeah.
right? So yes, maybe they're connected, maybe they're not. Does it matter? I don't know.
Well, the G spot is the female prostate, right? So
Yeah.
it's like
Hmm.
spongy tissue that surrounds the urethra. Guys, you've got spongy tissue that surrounds your urethra as well. So it's,
Yeah.
homologous to the corpus spongiosum.
Yeah, exactly. So,
And isn't it made out of that? Isn't it made out of different erectile tissue? Or am I remembering that incorrectly? No, it's the clitoral legs and the clitoral bulbs that are
yeah.
two different types of erectile structure. Okay.
Yeah, they're two different types of erectile structure that kind of map onto the erectile. Like, since the penis and the clitoris have the same biological origins, their erectile tissues
And
mimic each other.
what about the perineal sponge? Because that's another bed of erectile tissue between the opening of the vagina and the anus. So is that included in this clitoral urinary? See, so it leaves
No,
out all these parts. And I have had
yeah,
perennial sponge orgasms,
yeah,
100%.
yeah. It leaves out the cervix. It leaves out the uterus. It leaves out the P spot. It leaves out the perineal sponge. It leaves out the anus. It leaves out so much. But before we get into everything that it leaves out, I wanted to kind of talk about some of the research I did into like how did we get here
Yeah.
essentially, right? And like how are people why are people so passionate about this? And so one
Those on the internet were passionate.
well, no, just like the defenders of the clitoris as the only source of orgasm are like they are vehement. They are vehement about it. I had a very long argument with a sex educator on Reddit just this week about it.
I
And
mean,
she
tell
was
me you haven't ever had so what do they say about cervical orgasms then? If they're arguing and you're like, oh, well, and you're like, I have cervical orgasms, and they're like, no, you don't.
Her argument was you can't have penetration without stimulating the bulbs of the clitoris, and therefore all the clitoris is still involved no matter what you do. That was the argument.
So it can still be involved. Like whoever said you had to separate the clitoris out? No, I'm going to cut the clitoris out and only have cervical orgasms. What we're talking like anyway.
I know. I know. And then I told her about the study that they did on people with, severed spinal cords where
Uh-huh.
they were still able to orgasm from the cervix without, because once your spinal cord is severed, you don't have access to your clitoral system anymore because
Yeah,
of
your
the way that
pudendal
your
nerve.
body's
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Um, and and once I gave her all that, she said, "Well, that's too complicated. I could never tell someone all of that in one sentence." And I was like, "Actually, it's really not that complicated. You just say the clitoris is one of the most
One of the
accessible sources
many
of
one of the many sources of female pleasure and maybe the
yeah,
primary. Maybe it's the
yeah,
primary. It's
yeah.
okay.
We
Yay. It
love
can be
it.
primary. It's just not the only, y'all. Like
Yeah,
no segregation. No genital segregation.
yeah. Exactly, exactly.
We're here for miscegenation.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. So, okay, so in thinking about this, I was like, okay, what's happening here? And so I'm aware of and we've been aware of through our time working with this is that for a really long time, the clitoris was done wrong, right? Like there was just horrible information about the clitoral system. It was just demonized and treated very badly through human history. Well, through uh, European and US history,
Yeah,
I
I'm
Yeah.
going
should
to say
say
European
specifically.
not human history, sister. Northern Europe.
No,
How does
European
that work?
and US
Not the
history.
cradle of civilization did not occur in Northern Europe.
Uh-uh. No, there's a lot of other cultures who have long recognized different kinds of orgasms, pleasure, and sensation, other than the one that, is dominant in our culture. So, okay, so the complicated and controversial history of the clitoris in the West. All right, so ancient Greece, we'll start there. Um,
Wow.
so, and female anatomy was considered an inversion of male anatomy, which is like has some truth to it, but not total truth, because they considered the clitoris as an unfinished penis, right? Rather than understanding that they just had similar biological origins. And that was, I think, what's important about that distinction is that they kind of used it in order to belittle and keep, like it was another example of women being lesser than men in that culture. is kind of like saying, oh, you just have an unfinished penis, right?
Yeah, well, that's penis domination. So you can think of, like, in my mind, you can think of the penis as an as an external clitoris, right? That's another way
Yeah,
of thinking it, is the clitoris
yeah,
is inside, and that's the basic structure, and the penis is just a clitoris turned outside.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And then we go to the 15th century witch trials. And at that time, the clitoris was dubbed the devil's teat. There was a document called the Malleus Maleficarum, which was written about witches and witchcraft, and it associated clitoral arousal with witchcraft specifically. And clitoral stimulation was even proposed as a test for witches. And
So the beginning of sex magic, clitoral pleasure was a form of witchcraft, ladies. So there we go. That's incentive to get your masturbation on, get your self pleasure on, is do your do your magic, my friends. And then they would stroke and if you felt good, then you're burning. Talk about sexual trauma. If you have an orgasm, we're gonna set you on fire. It's terrible.
you have the devil's teat.
Oh,
It's
could
taken
you
over you.
imagine? And could you imagine? And can you imagine the dudes who would test the women and like stroke their clitoris to try and see if they could make them orgasm so they could burn them? That is crazy. That is so crazy. You had an orgasm, now you have to die.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh my God. Are you a therapist, coach, or sex educator looking for somatically based sexual healing methods to support your clients? Are you looking to become a certified sexologist and seeking a training that offers both an academic and an embodied approach to learning? Welcome to the IHS Holistic Sexology Certification, an accredited trauma-informed certification in holistic sexuality, somatic healing, embodiment, and pleasure-centered care. Early registration is open now until December 31st. Save $2,000 on your tuition when you apply now. Visit us at holisticsexologyinstitute.com to learn more.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's wild.
What,
Okay.
how do humans come up with this shit? That is insane.
I don't know. Okay.
Y'all, this is part of our history as North Americans. Like they did that on North American soil. I just wanted, this is part of our sexual heritage as a
Yeah.
culture, that they used to
Yeah.
burn women for having clitoral orgasms. So there we go.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on. 1545, French physician dissected the clitoris for the first time, and named it I can't speak French very well, membre honteux. I'm sorry, people who are French probably know that better than I do, but he basically called it the shameful member.
The shameful member. Oh, yes,
Yep.
because female pleasure is shameful.
Yeah. Yep. 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 And then we get into our good old friend Sigmund Freud,
Bless
who
his
is
heart.
probably the biggest villain in this conversation for how we got here. So Sigmund, among his many contributions to the world, had a lot of ideas about orgasms, right? And so he liked to refer to the clitoris as an infantile organ, so constantly kind of
That's the
putting the
Greek.
clitoris down.
Like harkening
Mhm.
back to the Greek thing, it's an undeveloped penis, so it's inferior to a male member.
Hmm. 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 And he promoted the vaginal orgasm as the hallmark of mature femininity. So, unless you could do that, you weren't a mature woman, and that was all the cause of your problems.
So
So,
I have a question. Why, how did, and maybe this is bigger than this conversation, but like in your research, like why did people listen to fucking Freud? Like was he having great orgasms? Like it's like some homeless dude, well sorry, I'm not going to shave, like whatever, just some person at Walmart. I'm going to go up to some person in Walmart and be like, okay, what do you think about orgasm? And they start telling me what they think about orgasm. Why am I going to believe them? Like who is Sigmund Freud? What is his qualification for designating certain types of orgasm. What qualified him to speak on the topic of female orgasm?
I guess just because of his fame as becoming essentially the father of therapy, right? And he that lended him the credibility to talk about, you know, the intersection between the body and the mind is my best guess. But I'm not a historian on Freud, but I do know that, he rose to fame as the father of modern therapy.
And here we are today.
And here we are.
Worked out for us all. How has that worked out? So here we are today, picking up the pieces. Because just
Yeah.
letting some random dude with some, maybe he had some cash, hand him a mic, and he's an expert now.
Yep.
Heard that
Yep.
podcast, bros?
Yeah. So thankfully we've abandoned a lot of Freud's theories. Um, he also claimed that failure to achieve vaginal orgasm indicated mental illness. And he introduced the concept of penis envy, viewing the clitoris as a failed penis.
I think that
So,
makes me sad. I feel a little sad in my heart at the thought that there have been, you know, probably hundreds, thousands, if not millions of women who have believed that they were broken because they haven't had a vaginal orgasm, largely because of this really shitty misinformation.
mhm.
So, that's the legacy of Freud, is that he has convinced, multitudes of women that their bodies are broken,
Yeah.
because he simply didn't understand human physiology, and that a woman must be fully engorged, or
Yeah.
at least somewhat engorged, in order to have a vaginal orgasm.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And he's primarily responsible for the massive pendulum swing in the other direction
Yeah,
that we'll talk about.
yeah,
Um, but I couldn't leave this conversation without presencing our friend Kellogg.
yes. Dear Cat.
Kellogg of the breakfast cereal name.
So
Um,
innocuous. So
yeah.
innocuous. One would never guess.
And I think you actually know a little bit more about Kellogg than I do. We talk about him a lot, more specifically when we talk about men, because he's one of the primary, tell me if I'm correct about this, he's one of the primary kind of bad actors involved in proliferating the spread of infant male circumcision in this country.
He's the number one. He is the person that got it institutionalized.
Yeah.
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 Specifically to make sex less pleasurable for all partners, for penis owners and vagina owners, like, to it makes sex less pleasurable. I actually want to talk about this at some point, because, like, I was thinking about it this week, that the circumcised penis wicks moisture, pulls moisture
Hmm.
out of the vagina, because one of the
Yeah.
functions of the foreskin is that it creates a seal around the vaginal opening to keep moisture in, and then it also applies pressure to the underside of the G spot, catalyzing female ejaculation, which is actually healthy and great for our bodies, right? And so, again, because of these bad actors, and these Kellogg and Freud and whatever, there's a lot of women walking around feeling shame because they want to or need to use lubrication with their circumcised male partners, and thinking that, again, their vaginas are broken because they don't stay wet enough, or they dry out, or whatever, they get tearing, whatever, when actually it's a circumcised penis creates friction, heat
Yeah.
friction in the vagina, and actually pulls moisture out of it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he interrupted a significant biological function
Yeah. He did.
with
Yeah.
intentionally to cause harm.
Yeah, yeah, and we could talk for a long time about Kellogg. Listeners, if you haven't ever done any research into who this man was, like he went way beyond breakfast cereal. He straight up invented a cult, and basically a lot of these sexual issues that we're seeing, like circumcision, are as a result of Kellogg. And the breakfast cereal was just one part of the quote unquote healthy lifestyle he was trying to create with his celibate cult.
His pleasureless his sexual pleasureless lifestyle, healthy lifestyle. So
Yeah,
what
yeah.
did he contribute to the conversation of the clitoris, other than I know he used to pour acid on teenage girls' clitoris to dissuade them from masturbating?
Yeah, yeah. So that's the part of it that I was going to bring up. So he wanted to burn the clitoris with acid. Just basically, he believed that all sexuality was bad. So yeah, yeah, I know.
If y'all can't see us, I'm like making this face. He poured acid on people's clitorises. Oh my fucking God.
Yeah,
And that was like culturally accepted.
yeah. It's psychotic. So he was on a mission to end masturbation and sex, and so he promoted circumcision in men to stop them from masturbating, and proposed burning clitorises, and in some cases did with acid. So that's lovely.
Okay, so this again is our sexual history as a culture, y'all. So we need to be aware because these concepts, even though they happened a long time ago, they are part of the fundamental um, um, foundation of our, at least in North America, our cultural dialogue around sexuality, right? So these were seeded in to the culture at very, early stages, and they perpetuate today. So for example, we're talking about Dr. Kellogg, who, a couple centuries ago was the thing. Well, they're still performing infant male circumcision in hospitals today and causing irreversible brain trauma, effing up these little infants' poor little brand new nervous systems by traumatizing their genitals, performing genital torture on these little baby boys, and then wondering why they're dysfunctional when they grow up as adults, and then damaging the sex lives of heterosexual couples, of PIV intercourse, making it less pleasurable and prone to tearing and friction burns and all kinds of stuff. So these, even though these concepts were seeded into the culture centuries ago, they're still in operation today. The system was built upon, the system that we live in today was built upon some of these effed up, notice I'm trying not to cuss, effed up, effed up, psychotic, quite frankly, psychotic
Yeah,
ideologies. Burning people's clitorises off is a form of torture. That is
yeah,
torture. That is psychotic. That is not okay, people. Please, please don't burn people's clitorises. Don't do that.
yeah,
All
truly.
right. So that's how we got
All
here
right.
today. That's the history. Where are we going from here?
Okay, so then eventually, towards the second half of the 20th century, our culture started researching sexuality. Masters and Johnson, Kinsey, all of that started to begin, and we started to, in our culture, see sexuality through a slightly different lens. But it wasn't until the 1990s that we began to actually map the clitoral system. So no one had any idea that the clitoris was anything but our little glands or that little nub until the 1990s.
Okay, I also want to say nobody in Western society, because I can't
Sorry,
attest
yes.
to what they knew in
Thank you.
other places. Yes, so
Yes,
nobody in
agreed.
Western society was aware that there was more to the clitoris than the little tiny button on top.
Thank
Or
you.
so in
Thank you
some
for.
cases, big button on top. There are different sizes of clitoris. Some people have
You're
very big
right. There
buttons,
are.
very big buttons.
Yes, thank
Bless
you for
your
bringing
heart.
it back around to all of the biological differences that we have that are completely normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, so in the 1990s, Helen O'Connell was the first person to start studying and mapping the clitoral system using MRI imaging, and discovered that the clitoris is 10 times larger than it was previously believed to be.
10
And this,
times. 10
yeah.
times. 10 times larger. Wow.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. And yeah, I think this is what really kind of sparked this pendulum swing in the other direction. I mean, this is a beautiful thing that we learned, right? And this inspired and activated so many women and peoples with vulvas and vaginas, all over the place. It really empowered people. And this is wonderful. I'm so happy to have this information and to understand more about my anatomy and what my body is capable of doing. Um, and the pendulum went from swinging to a healthy place to swinging over into the opposite direction. And so it's interesting. I see this really kind of in the same vein as so much of what we talk about, being that it just kind of it all feels like it's the same, wrapped up in the same kind of oppressions that we talk about on a regular basis, right? So like experienced oppression around our bodies, and then once we discovered that we that we actually have this wonderful, beautiful system, then instead of staying there and staying with the nuance, like the beauty of that and the nuance of what our bodies are capable of doing, then most of these primarily white feminists swung to the other direction and then became, hardened and militant about the clitoris itself.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, that militancy is something that that we encounter. And the like you were describing in the Reddit thing, the insistence that like this is the only way it can possibly be. Whereas like in terms of feminism, aren't we supposed to honor the experiences of all women? And if a woman is coming to you and saying, wow, I actually have cervical orgasms and A spot and P spot and anal orgasms and nipple orgasms, and I know my body, to then try and convince them that they don't know what they're talking about or discount what they're saying, or yeah, it's a very white feminist thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a very white supremacist thing to do, right? Because we go right back into, categorizing things into ultimates, like good, bad, and
Superior, inferior.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah. So let's
Okay.
talk about go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so we'll talk about that in a moment. I do also want to give a shout out in terms of mapping the internal erectile tissue. I want to give a shout out to Sherry Winston, Women's Anatomy of Arousal. If y'all haven't gotten that book yet, please do. That changed my whole world in terms of, now there's, some problematic aspects, but I'm talking about like there's problematic aspects of the book, but specifically the map that she offers for the internal beds of erectile tissue, because it is, we're about to go into all the different parts of it, so I won't steal your mic on that. But there's an extensive network, of internal erectile tissue. It goes far beyond just the clitoris itself, right? And so Sherry Winston's work, I remember encountering it in about 2010, 2011, has been revolutionary in terms of bringing us visual awareness of that internal erectile structure. So I wanted to give her a shout out, give her props for being a pioneer in terms of bringing that information to the masses.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that.
All right, so what are we working with in there?
Okay, so I just want to talk about some of the different types of orgasm that do not originate from the CUV. So we talked a little bit about them, but I want to outline them because there's a lot of them, and we want to prioritize people's lived experiences in addition to our scientific understanding of things because that's really important, and we can't we can't discard what people are experiencing.
Well, and the science is very small. It's only like what studies get funded and what those researchers decide that they're going to look at, but it's a very
Mhm.
small, very narrow window. And my understanding is the way that scientific studies are done is actually from gathering anecdotal evidence. Like anecdotal evidence, like lived experience is anecdotal evidence. It kind of points people in the direction of like, oh, so there's like masses of people reporting this phenomena. Maybe we should study this
Mhm.
phenomena specifically. So lived experience is evidence that then encourages people to look more deeply into the origins of where this lived experience may be being generated from. So I want to put that out there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so different kinds of orgasmic pleasure, not originating from the CUV. So we've already talked about cervical and uterine orgasms, uh, which again, cervix is innervated by three different nerves, including the vagus nerve, and the uterus is innervated by the vagus nerve as well. Our P-spot orgasms, which is the posterior fornix erogenous zone, that's basically up near the cervix, towards the back of your body, kind of towards your butt. Uh, Also, I didn't put perineal orgasms on here. I forgot about that, but that's one too. There's also anal orgasms. That's a very common orgasmic orgasm that many, many people have. That is definitely not related to the clitoris or the clitoral urethral vaginal complex.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me.
We have breast and nipple orgasms, which we just talked about in one of our last episodes. There's also orgasms from stimulation of the skin, the
Yeah.
ears, the feet.
Mhm.
There are throat gasms. So there are people who orgasms from giving blowjobs.
Woo!
Woohoo! That's
Yes.
amazing.
Preach,
Yeah.
sister, preach.
There are exercise-induced orgasms, what they call corgasms. So some people will have orgasms at the gym while they're exercising. I, I
Bless your
mean,
heart.
there people have reported having orgasms from toothbrushing,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I've never experienced myself, but that's pretty incredible. And there's also energy orgasms. Oh gosh, there's so many different kinds of orgasms. Some of the other ones that some of our students have reported just they keep growing, right? So energy orgasms. We've had students orgasm from doing the ocean breath.
Mhm.
Right? So extended breath work with absolutely no physical touch
Mhm.
gave them an orgasmic experience. And then yeah, just recently I heard of someone who experienced orgasm while they were receiving acupuncture
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
Um, so it really feels limitless to me.
Yes, exactly. Our orgasmic potential is limitless. That's the thing. Our bodies were built for bliss. Our bodies are wired for bliss. The human body is, in the Buddhist tradition, the body is Buddha, and the Buddha consciousness is bliss consciousness. The body is wired for bliss. And so that's
Mhm.
why we want to bring this education to you so that you are not limited. So because we can be limited, by our imagination, by our concepts of what's possible, and so we want to expand your horizon so that there's limitless possibility. And so if you're having some pleasure and you have different orgasmic sensations arise, you don't shut them down because you think that they're wrong in some way, or oh no, I'm not supposed to be able to feel that, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes I found that for me, like, just knowing that something is possible opens up that experience for me. It opens up then I start having that experience because I believe it's possible, therefore it is, therefore it happens, right? So that's why it's important for you as our audience to understand that your capacity for orgasm and pleasure is as limitless as you are. It's as
Hmm.
infinite as God, truly.
Hmm. Yeah, it truly is. Oh, and there's also orgasms driven by the brain. We're talking a lot about the body, but the brain is a huge contributor to orgasm as well. So, psychological, emotional, intellectual pleasures can induce orgasm. And one of my favorite fun facts is that sometimes uh, people who are in power play, like dominatrix, will have orgasms in the middle of a scene. So they won't, they're engaged in a scene themselves and they're so turned on by the experience that they have orgasms and they're not touching themselves at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that. See, so limitless, right? It's like, I mean, why limit our capacity for bliss? Why would you want to do that?
Yeah. So,
So there we
and then
go, y'all.
yeah, and then my concluding statement here is talking about like it's important to note while Western medical and religious traditions often suppressed or ignored the clitoris, which I did talk about this earlier, many Asian, pre-colonial, African, and indigenous traditions, especially those that incorporate spirituality with sexuality, embraced female pleasure as essential, transformative, and even divine. And they outlined paths to orgasm that included stimulation of the clitoris but also the vagina, the cervix, and much more. So what has been like discovered by the white Western world has been known and practiced for years in other cultures.
For millennia, yeah. And some of the
Yeah, millennial.
tantric Buddhist texts, they refer to the or Vajra Yogini herself refers to her vulva, but the clitoris as her stamen of bliss. She calls her vulva my three-petaled lotus with a stamen of bliss, right? So, and this isn't a like 2,000-year-old text that they're talking about, come bow before my three-petaled lotus and stamen of bliss, and, love me long time and get on your knees and lick it, boy. So she gives some very explicit instructions about how she wants her stamen of bliss to be pleasured. But yeah, it's referred to as a stamen, or a bliss point, bliss pearl, my pearl of bliss. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
love that. It's referenced in ancient traditions. So yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So let's talk again. So just to clarify, the CUV is only the clitoral glands, legs and bulbs,
Hmm.
the urethral sponge, right? The clitoral urinal vaginal complex. So it's just those three
Yeah.
parts.
And sometimes they include kind of the whole anterior, some people include the whole anterior wall of the vagina with that, but it seems like definitions are maybe differ a little bit depending on who you're talking to.
Because if we're talking about erectile tissue structures, the erectile tissue on the anterior wall of the vagina doesn't typically extend all the way to the cervix. So
No, it
it's like, my
doesn't.
understanding is about 1 to 3 inches
Yes.
inside the vagina. So something that we teach in our training programs are the 5 beds of erectile tissue. So the 3-part clitoris, so the
Mhm.
clitoral glands, which is, there's debate about whether the glands is actually erectile tissue or just actual nerve fibers. So the clitoral glands and shaft, the clitoral legs, and the clitoral bulbs, which attach to the legs. So if you don't know what this looks like, please go Google or chat GP a diagram. But then there's the perennial sponge, which is a bed of erectile tissue between the anus and the vagina, which is homologous to the root of the penis. And
Mm.
then there's the periurethral sponge, which we were talking about, which is the spongy erectile tissue that surrounds the urethra. So that's 5 beds of erectile tissue. That
Mhm.
also doesn't include the 4 specific nerve pathways that
Mhm.
innervate the female genitals, right? So sorry if anyone's triggered by the word female, that's just the way my brain is working in terms of like the anatomical structures of that we're talking about. So I apologize if that's a trigger. But something we also teach, and I don't know if you were going to talk about this again, are those 4 nerve pathways that nourish the genitals. Were you going to talk about that?
Mm-mm, no, please do.
Okay, well then I will. So to give you context, so right, so there's we've got the spinal column, and we have these nerve pathways that come down the spinal column that then branch out into nerve branches and pathways and end up in nerve fibers, right? And then we have that beautiful vagus nerve that bypasses the spinal column and connects directly to the uterus and cervix. And so Alaina was alluding to a study that was done by Komisarek. Was it a Rutgers study by Komisarek and Whipple, I believe, about I believe that was the study,
Yeah. Hmm.
about how they did a study on women who were paraplegic, and they had no sensation, waist down, right? None at all. Could not feel the clitoris, could not feel, the vulva, could not feel the anus. But when the cervix was stimulated, it gave rise to, they had cervical orgasm. And that was because of the vagus nerve, which bypasses the spinal column, which bypasses the spinal cord. That's the word I was looking for before. So the 3 nerve pathways that are part of the spinal cord are your hypogastric nerve. Your hypogastric nerve connects to your uterus and your cervix. And according to the research that we've done, that is the main nerve pathway that also gives rise to the A spot and the P spot orgasm. A spot is front of the body, in front of the cervix. P spot is posterior, behind the cervix, right? So it's that hypogastric nerve that you're stimulating when you're stimulating right up around the cervix. And then there is the pelvic nerve. So the pelvic nerve, again, innervates the uterus, the cervix, as well as the vagina, and the specifically the periurethral sponge is the
Hmm.
pelvic nerve innervation. And then the pudendal nerve is what is considered to be, I've heard it referenced as a more shallow nerve branch, which innervates the external of your vulva. So the clitoral glands, your labia, your inner and outer labia, your vaginal opening, your introitus, your perennial sponge, and the opening of your anus. And then, of course, inside the anus, your pelvic nerve also innervates that area as well. So these are 4 distinct nerve pathways that feed and nourish all these different areas of your body. And I just want to point out how much God loves us God loves us so much that even if we cannot walk, even if we cannot walk, we can still come. God loves us so much that even if we cannot walk, we can still come with that cervical orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
with that cervical stimulation. So I mean, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it is beautiful. I've even heard in my kind of around the same time I was doing that research, Davy, years ago, I came across a study where they were researching how folks who had lost limbs started experiencing, some of them started experiencing orgasm in the limb that they lost. So, like, they would have an orgasm, like, let's say they lost their hand, and they would feel it in their kind of like phantom hand. And it's because the brain is so incredible that it kind of, since that part of the brain wasn't being used anymore, it kind of got took over by other parts of the brain. And this ended in experiencing their orgasm in that place that the brain used to have dominion over.
That's again, that's beautiful, and it also brings to mind the concept of the energy body, right? So the
Mhm.
energy body is senior to the physical body, and so I've talked often in terms of Tibetan medicine and the energy body. We reference this in terms of if a yoni owner or a woman has a hysterectomy, can she still have, cervical orgasms? Well, if you don't have a cervix, then you can't necessarily have a cervical orgasm specifically, but some of those nerve pathways will still be intact and the energy body is still intact, right? So the energy, just because you remove the physical organ doesn't mean that those energy channels are necessarily removed, that the energy body will remain present, will remain available. And so that also helps regenerate nerve pathways is when we work directly with the energy body and boost those energy pathways, it then translates to the physical body and nerve pathways. So that phantom, I've often thought of that in terms of phantom pain and phantom pleasure for lost limbs, is that's a really beautiful, I would say, tangible example of the reality of the energy body. The physicalness is gone, but the energy is still there, right? But also the concept that, that there's still pleasure to be accessed. And I wonder in terms of that for folks who may have lost limbs and maybe experience phantom pain, I wonder about being able to do the translating pleasure exercise for that.
Mm,
Being
yeah.
able to, so if there's phantom pain, maybe stimulating, a pleasurable area of the body and seeing if you can translate that to the energy, the expression of pain that you're feeling from the energy body. Just the
Yeah.
thought.
Yeah.
Just the
Like
thought.
bringing your breath and awareness to the pain while stimulating pleasure in other parts.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see if you can translate the pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If y'all haven't learned the translating pleasure technique, you will learn it in my Sacred Art of Self Pleasure for Women. That is happening December 9th. If you haven't had an opportunity to sign up, please go ahead. I will have to drop the link in the description because I can't remember it off the top of my head. But the Sacred Art of Self Pleasure, December 9th, we're going to do a sacred pleasure ritual together. We will not be naked. But we will meditate and we will breathe, and I will guide us through pleasure mudras and the practice of pleasure surfing and dancing your winds through pleasure and intention and breath. And again, that's December 9th, and I will drop the link below so that you can go ahead and sign up. We're running a special right now until November 30th. It's only $69 to join us for this
Woohoo.
event, and you will have lifetime access. It will be recorded and you will have lifetime access. So just wanted to throw that plug in there as we're talking about translating pleasure, because that is a technique that I will be teaching during that class, 2.5 hour workshop with me. Yeah. All right. So what else we got, Elena?
That's what I have.
That's it. All right. All
Unless there's
right.
other things you want to talk about.
All right. So the intention with this episode is to highlight for you the exact science behind why your clitoris is not the only source of female orgasm. Because, as Elena said, there's a lot of noise out there in the industry trying to tell you that it is. Now, it is a primary source of female pleasure, 100%. It is one of our, for those who have awakened clitorises, and not that that's some special club, it's just like the clitoris is generally the most pleasurable zone. But I have in my 17-year career encountered some women whose clitorises are not sensitive. Their clitorises may be
Mhm.
numb for a variety of reasons, right? So
Yeah,
I also want to put that caveat in there that, if your clitoris is not your primary source of pleasure, that's okay too. Whatever your primary source of pleasure is good. Say yes to your pleasure wherever it happens. It's a good thing, right? So the clitoris can be a primary source of pleasure, but it is not the sole source of female orgasm. And we really wanted to illustrate that for you clearly to allow you to open pathways to access your full orgasmic potential, because why the heck not?
exactly.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So, this is some of the information that we include in our holistic sexology certification training program, the beautiful in depth dissertation that Alaina does these deep dives into topics specifically of genital anatomy. And we've been doing this together for over a decade. So, this is not new for our students, our current students and graduates, but it will be new for you if you join our holistic sexology certification training program. And we are now still in the early registration window until December 31st. So if you want to become a certified sexologist from the only government accredited school offering this type of sexology certification, then please go to holisticsexologyinstitute.com and check out our certification page. We do have a little 45-minute dissertation, I would say video dissertation on the curriculum that you can go ahead and sign up and watch if you want to learn more about the nuts and bolts of the curriculum. But we do have it all there on the page displayed for you. And if you have any questions, you can, of course, send us those questions. We're happy to answer them, but you can also just go ahead and apply now and book a free consultation with us to answer any of those questions. So again, that's holisticsexologyinstitute.com and our holistic sexology certification program, government accredited and currently under ASECT review, so that this will also be an ASECT approved program, because we want you to have as many credible credentials as you can. I don't know if that's the best terminology, but this field is it's full. It's a full field. It's a wonderful thing. There's a lot of wonderful conversation about sexology, and some of it's very accurate and some of it's not. And so we want to ensure that for our students and our graduates moving out in the world, that you have the most up-to-date, accurate information to share with your clients. And we also, because it's holistic, we also offer a holistic lens. So it's not just the Western, you know, dissecting, cutting up, and putting people into these little compartmentalized, isolated silos of information in your body, or just these little parts that, they can't figure out how they work together. We offer a holistic view and a holistic lens of all of our parts, and not just our body parts, our emotional parts, our psychological parts, our spiritual parts, our systemic parts, our communal parts, our societal parts, because we are whole human beings, and whole includes everything. So that's my pitch.
Beautiful.
That's my pitch, y'all. Go ahead and check it out. There's no pressure. If you want to sign up, you can. If you want more information, you can get it. But if you're interested, if you want to invest in an accredited credentials certification program in the field of holistic sexology, then we do invite you to check out our program, because we work hard to make sure that we keep those credentials in place, that government accreditation and that ASEC certification. Yeah. Yeah, yay. All right. Anything else on this topic, our dear Alaina?
No, thank you for letting me talk about it. That was nice and thorough, and I feel vindicated that that I was able to discuss this today and put it out in the world. So, if you're out there and you see sex educators talking about this, feel free to link them back to this episode so that they can learn more.
Yeah, I was gonna say you should drop this link in that little Reddit group where folks were arguing with you about it, and they can hear you talk about them.
I will.
Hi, y'all. We were talking about you. Bless your hearts. Thanks for listening. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, we appreciate you. We value you. Um, Yeah, it's an honor to be back. And I also just want to say, like, I was reviewing, the episodes. So this is we're coming to the end of season one, y'all. So last episode of season one is going to be December 18th. Then we're going to take a little hiatus and gather our wins, so to speak. And then we will be back in action in February of 2026. And so yesterday I was just kind of going through some of the episodes and kind of like, observing the arc. And I want to again express appreciation for all of you listeners who have stayed with us through this kind of journey. Came out with a like big blast of, my house burned down. This is where we've been doing, and then we're exposing effery in the industry, and Davey's going to try and stop cussing, but she really doesn't. But anyway, so just the whole arc of where we've been for this season, and I appreciate those of you who have stayed with us. Again, it really meets our needs for encouragement and support and inspiration to continue bringing you this work, to continue bringing you this medicine. So we appreciate, again, and keep saying that word of appreciation is one of my love languages. If you want to know Davey's love language, words of appreciation is one of my primary love languages. So your words of appreciation really, really, really are a source of nourishment for my spirit, for my heart and my spirit. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. We will leave you at that, signing off. And we look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of Sex is Medicine. Make sure you like and subscribe, like and subscribe, like and subscribe.
You've been listening to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education.
Make sure you like and subscribe to Sex is Medicine on all your listening platforms and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, where you can get your daily dose of Sex is Medicine videos and episode recaps. Also, make sure you register for your weekly dose of Sex is Medicine at holisticsexologyinstitute.com and send us your questions, please, at questions@holisticsexologyinstitute.com. Thank you so much for listening to Sex is Medicine.